Once upon a time, there was a king. A man came to him and he said, I will teach you a game that you will absolutely love to play. And he taught the king how to play chess. And that was the story of the invention of chess, as one of the folklores go. Now, nobody really knows and there is no evidence, but that's how the story goes. So the king says, what would you like as a reward for this beautiful game, for inventing this game? So the man says, I want wheat. He says, how much wheat do you want? So he says, place 1 grain of wheat on the first box of the chessboard and then double it up in the next. So first box will have 1 grain, second box will have 2, third box will have 4, fourth box will have 8, and so on till the 64th box of the chessboard. Now, the king laughs and says, why did you ask for such meager amounts? You could have asked for something bigger. But mind you, he had not calculated it yet. So when he did calculate it, the number turned out to be quite daunting. And let me read the number out to you. And this is actually quite famous, wheat and the chessboard problem. Look it up and you'll find it. And the number comes to 18 quintillion, 440 quadrillion, 744 trillion, 73 billion, 709 million, 551,615, which is over 1.4 trillion metric tons of wheat. It is said that if you create a 10 by 10 room from the planet Earth all the way till the moon, it would still be less, uh, uh, not big enough to store that much wheat. Hello, friends. My name is Neil, and today we are talking about the power of compounding. When it comes to investment, the best thing to do is to invest your money in good investment instruments, whether it's stocks or mutual funds, and then wait. Let it compound over a period of time. We've heard Benjamin Franklin talk about it, we've heard Warren Buffett speak about it. But the question is, how does it compound? So there are 3 ways that it can compound. The first way is you buy a stock, let's say 100 stocks of 10 rupees each. Over a period of time, the stock price increases. So it goes from 10 rupees to 12 rupees, which basically means your asset base went from 1000 rupees to 1200 rupees. The second way that it can compound is bonus and splits, bonus stocks and splits. Um, so you have 100 stocks of 10 rupees each. The company declares a bonus or a split, which means the number of stocks goes up from 100 to 200, but the market price of the stock goes from 10 rupees to 5 rupees. So your asset base at that point in time remains the same, which is 1000 rupees. But now the stock has become more affordable, which means more people can trade over it. And over a period of time, in the next couple of months, the price of the stock will rise, especially if it is a good stock. So it goes from 5 rupees to 8 rupees, which means your investment, which was earlier 1,000 rupees, now goes to 1,600 rupees. Yeah? Because 8 multiplied by 200 is 1,600. The third way that your stock price can go up or your asset base can compound is, let's say you have 100 stocks worth 10 rupees, which is 1,000 rupees. The company declares a rights issue. What that means is for every 2 stocks, 1:2 rights issue, which means for every 2 stocks that you own, you can buy one more stock at a discounted rate. So let's say that the stock price was 10 rupees. You've got 100 stocks, so you can buy 50 stocks at a discounted rate of, let's say, 8 rupees. That way, what happens is your investment in the company increases, but at a discounted rate. And the average cost price of your stock comes down. So earlier, the average cost price of your stock was 1,000 rupees. Now the average cost price of your stock, while the stock number of stocks has gone up to 150, you've only spent 1,400 instead of 1,500 in the company. But the market price of the stock is still 10 rupees. So that way, the market price of your stock is 1,500 rupees, but you've only spent 1,400 rupees on it. So there are many ways that you can benefit out of the compounding effect of stocks. If you combine all of this, let us say that over a period of time the price has gone up, and every 5 years or so the company declares splits and bonuses, which means your asset base doubles over the next couple of months. And then you get rights issues, which means you are able to buy stocks at a discounted price. Uh, your asset base will increase tremendously. The only problem is time. It takes time. Now, I came to know about all of this quite late in my life. Earlier, I used to believe that I'll work hard and I'll get rich. But, you know, it's always a good idea to invest early so that you have the power of time in your hands. I started investing very late, but doesn't have to be like that. And that's the reason I'm doing this video. My advice to all the youngsters out there, start investing from the first day that you start earning. But I can do you one more, I can do better than that. Let's say I have children. I have two boys, by the way, 6 and 9 today. Let's say that they start investing from this age. Is that possible? Absolutely, it is. Let's talk about that. But before we get to them in starting to invest, let's talk about what they should be investing in. There are two broad categories of investment that you can do for your children, especially if they are young. One is mutual funds and other is direct equity. And I'm only going to categorize them based on that. Obviously, you can bifurcate and detail it out into many, many categories. And there are many things that you can do, so to speak. You can buy gold, you can buy land and such. But we'll not talk about that. Here, I want to compare and contrast between mutual funds and direct equity. Let's talk about mutual funds. Within mutual funds also, there are multiple types of mutual funds. There are many mutual fund plans, such as children's education plan and such. I'll not get into that. Here, I will only talk about equity-based open-ended mutual funds. The reason I don't want to get into the other categories is because one, I've never trusted them, whether it's ULIP, whether it's, children's education plans or what have you. Never trusted them because I don't think they can give us the returns that they promise. But open-ended mutual funds are actually quite promising. And for a long period of time, I did invest into open-ended mutual funds. But over a period of time, I have also come to realize that open-ended mutual funds can also not give you the kind of returns that direct equity can. Okay, um, there are multiple reasons. First reason is, mutual fund houses or mutual fund companies are in the business to earn money. So when you invest in a mutual fund, the mutual fund houses are going to take a part of that money that you're investing in for their expenses. Now, there are two types of expenses usually. One is a one-time expense, which is earlier there used to be an entry load and an exit load. Then entry load was basically removed by the Security and Exchange Board of India. Depending upon which mutual fund you're going for, there may or may not be an exit load. So that is the one-time expense. The second expense is a recurring expense, which is also called the total expense ratio. Now, total expense ratio could be anywhere between 1.75 to 2.5 or 2.25% of the money that you're investing in, which they charge you for their administrative expenses and such. So essentially, the money that you're investing in a mutual fund, the entire money never goes as an investment. There's a part of that investment which will be taken up by the mutual fund company itself. Other than that, the fund managers themselves cannot really give you the returns because they need to show consistent performance of the product that they have, the mutual fund product that they have, which essentially means that they have to make a trade-off between consistent performance and eventual performance. So let's say that the mutual fund is not performing for a short period of time for about 3 to 6 months, but at the end of 6 months, the mutual fund manager sees the potential for the NAV to go drastically up. He still cannot take the decision because he needs to show consistent performance over a period of time. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is you lose a great amount of flexibility and you pay a large amount of money as charges when you're investing in mutual funds. And that is why you don't get the kind of returns that you could in direct equity, right? Having said that, I'm not saying that mutual funds are not lucrative. There are many mutual funds that are lucrative. And if you're not interested in learning to know more about stocks, then mutual funds, open-ended, equity-based mutual funds are your best bet. Now, considering that you're watching this video, I am assuming that you do want to learn about equity and direct equity. So what happens to the risk? Well, I have come up with a list of 30 to 32 stocks which are fairly risk free. So if you have money and if you want to invest, I'll share the list of stocks. And I'm also running a series in which I'm trying to explain why these 30 stocks are actually good. We are doing a fundamental analysis and a trend analysis, and I'll share the link in the description of this video. Um, you can take a look at that. Now, direct equity is the way to go, is what I feel, and that is my personal opinion. Now, if you do agree that direct equity is the way to go, and if you would like to leverage the power of compounding, then you should start investing in direct equity for your children immediately. Now, is that possible? Absolutely. Let's talk about that now. To start investing for your children are going to require a PAN card and an Aadhaar card. Can your children have a PAN card at this age? Yes, they can. If they don't, then what you can do is you can apply for a PAN card for them, and it'll come to your house. Everything is online these days. So if you how do you apply for a PAN card? Just search on Bing or Google and say PAN card application. And the first link that you see usually is thepancard.com. Don't go to that. Go to the tin.nsdl.com. There you will see new PAN and you will just go through the process. It's a very, very simple process. Um, uh, Fill out all the details. It will ask to upload the Aadhaar card and a few other documents. Upload them. Keep checking the status, because sometimes what happens is after the inspection of the proper documents, um, they ask for more documents, more evidence, etc. So just make sure that you check the status regularly and upload the documents. There's a facility to upload the documents there itself. And once everything is done, they will send you an email saying the application has been processed, and they will ship the PAN card of your children to the provided address. It's a very simple process. Do apply for it. Once you've done that, you will have to have open a demat account for yourself. I'm assuming that you already have that. Otherwise, you would not be watching this video. If you have that, then contact your broker, whoever it is, whether it's Zerodha or Sharekhan or um, uh, there are a number of brokers there. All the brokers now have the facility of opening a demat account for your children. Once that is opened, start investing on a regular basis. Set them up with a considerably large amount to begin with, and then don't worry about how much you are investing, what the amount is every month, but be consistent about investing every month. I will share a list of about 30 to 32 stocks in the description of this video. Take a look at those. Take a look at the series that we are running to explain why these videos are good. Understand the concepts of stock market investing thoroughly and take a decision around investing. There's a good probability that if you invest regularly in these stocks, and this list keeps on changing, so do watch this space for any updates that might be there in that list. Uh, if you invest on a regular basis, by the time they are in college, they will be financially independent and they will not have to worry about uh, you know working for money. Now, the strategy to investing is actually very simple. The Decide which stocks you are going to be investing in, at least in the medium term. So let's say that you decide that you would like to invest in these 30 stocks. Whatever money you have, spread it between these 30 stocks equally. Uh, you won't be able to do that immediately. So start with one, and then two, and then three. Let's say that you decide that you'll invest 10,000 rupees in each stock to begin with, right? So you invest 10,000 rupees in each stock. Now the stock price keeps changing. Some of them will compound. So some of them will grow faster than the others. The ones that are not growing faster than the others, invest money next time in those. Try to keep a balance between all the stocks that you have, and don't touch it. Don't remove it. Not until you see that the stock is actually starting to go down. And there are some strategies that we will talk about that also, as to how to invest in the long term and such. And this is a constant video where we explore such subjects. In the end, I would like to say that ambition, career, all these things are very important. Financial independence is also very important. But these are two separate things. I wouldn't want money to be associated to work. What I mean to say is, if you are working only for money, the probability of you being unhappy becomes more, right? If you are financially independent, then you are free to go and do whatever you want to in life. You are free to pursue your passion, even if it does not give you too much returns. I wanted to play the guitar, and you can see those guitars hanging behind. I don't play really well, but I wanted to, but I could not because it's not a very financially lucrative field, music. You have to be the best of the best to really start earning money in it, and there's a long struggle period. So I took the easier way of getting into IT and doing whatever it is that I'm doing until now, right? So I would have enjoyed my life a lot more if I would have pursued music, but I could not because I had financial dependencies. There's a lot of importance that I give to career and ambition. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I want you or I want people to do what they feel happy about. And I think that I would love it if my children are just happy. I don't want them to become lazy or completely dependent on the money that I'm investing for them. But it's also important that they do what makes them happy. So I hope you like the content that I've presented today, and I'm always looking for feedback. Do let me know if you don't agree with any of my ideas. Do let me know if you would like me to cover any other ideas. I'll do my best. Other than that, I wish us all the best, and I hope we make a ton of money off the stock markets. Have fun.